Hey guys, welcome to Failed But Learned. Today we'll be looking at my Robocop painting, which just happened this morning. And it was so bad that I decided to make a series out of it. Because I record all of my paintings, there's some that don't make the cut. I don't show them. I don't make videos out of them just because they're horrible failures. But you know what? I do have recordings of them. And I thought about what happened with Robocop this morning because it's cringy and embarrassing. But I'm like, I have it. And these are the videos that artists usually don't show. I'm gonna show it. I'm gonna show it because maybe there's something to learn from it. Because I feel like even though it failed, I feel like I've got some goodies out of it. So let's jump into it. So this was the first painting that I did in my sketchbook. This is a fairly small moleskin sketchbook. I gessoed the page a few days prior, so I had time to set. Everything's good. And I decided to paint Robocop. And some of the rules that I set for myself was let's use big brushes only. And the reason for this was to stay loose. But immediately as I started here with one of my bigger brushes, I noticed something going horribly wrong, and is all of my paint was looking very oily, very fatty. I had a lot of solvent in here, which is something I typically do in my underpaintings. I take the paint out of the tube, I will mix it in with some solvent, and I kind of just like brush it on there, canvas or panel board, whatever, and it kind of dries pretty quickly. A lot of the solvent evaporates, and then I can put on a second layer, right? This was not happening here. This was not happening here at all. So I immediately knew that I was in trouble, and I started to get anxious because I had this whole plan going into this. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. And at this point, like we're talking about a few minutes into the painting, it was no longer fun. It was like recovery mode. And what I on top of this, I problem number two comes in very shortly here, after where here we go. These three lines that I put in right above RoboCop's head or right above his visor, I shouldn't have done that. And they do exist. They do exist. As I was looking at the reference, these are the lines kind of like machine cut into his helmet. They're there. The problem is that I incorporated them or tried to incorporate them way too soon. And I did that for good reason. I needed to space things out. Like, when you're painting or drawing, you kind of have to say like, okay, like, the eyes, in this case, his visor, let's say it's like, like a centimeter below the first line. And then the second line, which is above the first line on his helmet, is like maybe a centimeter and a half above that line. So you're measuring things mentally by looking at these reference points. And I, for some reason, decided like, yes, I can't trust myself with the position of the visor. Let's kind of like jot these lines in. But the minute I did that, I went into detail mode. I stopped being able to use big brushes because big brushes were not able to do these lines. So I grabbed a smaller brush. And then once I grabbed that brush, I'm like, okay, let's work on some of the other areas with that brush. And I just kind of got into this detailed game. To give myself some credit, it started working right here as I started doing these highlights. You can see it around his chin, around his mouth, and then the lips right here. We can start seeing his lips somewhat. And at this point where I'm putting in some of the shadows underneath the lips, I'm starting to see Murphy slightly. Not like a realistic version of him, but I'm starting to see him. I am feeling a little bit better, and I'm like, I can salvage this at least a little bit. But these damn machine lines, I keep working around them. You guys can see me putting in these highlights on his helmet, or I'm sorry, these shadows on his helmets, and I'm kind of the whole time I'm fighting with these machine lines. And here I paint on top of them, I blur them out. I'm so upset that I'm trying to put them back in, and I think at this point I just decided I've had enough. It kind of looks enough like him for me to know what I got out of this painting, and I decided to stop right here. So in short, this is a major flop for me, but I've learned one, I need to learn how to how to paint on different surfaces, how to mix paint on different surfaces, how much paint I should put down, and what type of strokes I can do to make sure that that first underpainting layer is drier. I needed it to be drier. I needed that just to kind of give myself a overall shapes, to put in some values that I can work on top of. And I just put down too much fatty paint somehow. I don't know how this happened, but it did happen. And we are where we are. It just felt like I was painting with ketchup and mayonnaise, and it was very hard to control at that point. Uh, Point number two, I didn't stick to the game plan. I said I'm gonna stay loose. I'm gonna use big brushes, and I immediately jumped in. For what reason, I do not know. Like, I mean, I know I was using it for measuring, but those lines on his helmet, like, why I couldn't just trust myself, and I decided to paint them in really early in, and it really threw me off. And after that, it was kind of survival mode. You know, the one good part about this was that once I knew I failed, I knew this was not going to be a successful painting. I sort of relaxed. I decided to, like, let's just have some fun with it. Let's see if we can recover it. And then when the lips came in and the lips sort of started making it look like Murphy, I felt I felt good enough to call it quits and still being proud of it, being in my sketchbook, at least for myself. I'll know what I went through on this painting, and I'm hoping I can use this, I can use the the feelings that I have about it now to improve my future paintings. So I will redo them again. I'm gonna redo RoboCop for sure, but maybe in a few weeks. I might need a little bit of time to kind of get over this one, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you guys like this failed but learned series, I feel like we typically don't show the flops, and maybe that's where most of the lessons lie. So I have all my work recorded. All of my flops have been recorded. I have a lot of I have way more flops than the stuff you guys see that makes it online. So if you guys like this type of stuff, let me know. Leave a like, drop a comment. It would be awesome if you guys subscribe. But whatever you guys can do would be great. And thank you. Cheers.